Peace and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, we got a lot to talk about. Let's talk about President Biden making history as he joined the United Auto Workers on their protest on the picket lines. We'll share with you what the president had to say about that. Also, we'll talk about Vice President Harris continues her fight for our freedoms tour at HBCU. She's down at Morehouse College in Atlanta. And I'm going to share with you some of the remarks she's made about the issues of abortion, voting rights, and so much more of that. Later on, let's talk about this Texas student that was suspended twice because of the length of his hair. Now his family has moved forward to actually filing a lawsuit against the governor of Texas over the hair dispute. And my question to you is, should they sue? We'll talk a little bit about that. And I got a big announcement today, folks. Woo! Huge. Very excited to share it with you. So make sure y'all stick around because the big announcement is going to be happening this afternoon. All right. So we got a lot to cover here on this today's edition of The Culture. Make sure y'all tune in. Make sure y'all jump into the chat on YouTube. And of course, we got stick around. We got so much more. So stay with us. It's The Culture happening here, right here, exclusively here on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
UAW.
All right, folks, welcome to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for checking in and riding with us this afternoon. Folks, we got a lot to talk about, but let me first check in with my crew, the Culture crew that is checking in all around the country. I see folks on Roland Martin's YouTube page, and folks, you could join us right there as well. Just go onto YouTube, look under Roland Martin, and click on the link for the show that is streaming live right now. And so many of you are checking in. I see my big brother, Brother Damon Blissett. Hey, King of Queens. Hey, Brother Damon. Good to connect with you once again, sir. Always a pleasure. My sister Pauline Hurt checking in. Pauline, thank you so much for checking in. Anastasia, peace and love to you as well. Thank you so much for checking in. Vic Abram, good afternoon, dear brother Vic. Thank you so much for checking in. And Pretty Brown Mimi 726. Pretty Brown Mimi, thank you so much. Happy Tuesday, Mimi. Cindy D, I see you, sis. Hello to you too, Cindy D. Thank you so much for checking in. And folks are coming into the room. And again, folks, we're streaming live on the YouTube page for Roland Martin on YouTube. Also, we're streaming, of course, on Facebook, on social media. But our big distributor, our big platforms, of course, our home platforms, blackstarnetwork.com. Make sure you go to our website today, download the app for free, follow us on social media, and more importantly, give something to help power this digital movement. So that's at blackstarnetwork.com. And you could also check us out on Amazon News or your Fire TV. And we're also on Plex TV. And on those two platforms, you can check us out 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So looking forward to that. And we're still growing, folks. We are still growing and building. All right, let's talk about the history that was made today. President Biden, this is the first time a modern sitting president has joined the picket line for workers. That's right. President Biden has gone on to the picket lines for the United Auto Workers as they are taking a stand for better pay, better benefits, and so much more. So I want to share with you just a few moments of some of the remarks of what the president had to say as he joined the UAW on the front line. This is day 12 of their strike, and they're striking against the big American automakers. And they have a lot to say. They are expecting more. And the president put it out there, hey, back in 2008, you saved the auto industry. And guess what? The auto industry needs to repay the favor. Take a listen.
UAW, you saved the automobile industry back in 2008 and before. Made a lot of sacrifices, gave up a lot, and the companies were in trouble. Now they're doing incredibly well. And guess what? You should be doing incredibly well too. It's a simple proposition. Stick with it. Because you deserve the significant raise you need and other benefits.
Let's get it.
Let's get back who we lost, okay? Yeah. We say to them, it's about time for them to step up for us. Thank you. Now, there's a guy I know you don't know here, but I brought him along anyway. Sean Payne, your president. Yeah.
That was big. It was about 48 seconds, but it's 48 seconds that it was heard around the country. Again, folks, this is the first time a modern sitting president has joined workers on the picket line. And it's interesting that President Biden has decided to make this move. Now, here's the thing. I know some people might say, some people might say, oh, this was more political. Because at the same time, folks, another former president, former president, is expected to give some remarks to the auto workers as well, right there in Michigan. Who was that guy? Oh, Donald Trump. And that's something. They both are trying to do their thing, build those relationships with workers. And that's right. It's very interesting to say the least. But Donald Trump is expected to give some remarks to the auto workers as well as he tries to show his stand or his solidarity or however you want to call it for him. But at the same time, President Joe Biden did these things as well. Again, folks, this is day 12 of the strike. And the president talked about this, and I don't, making sure that you heard it correctly, because I know that the volume is a little bit low, just on their end, not our end, guys. But the president talked about sticking with it. You deserve the significant raise you need. But he also informed them that back in 2008, when the auto industry was in peril, it was uncertain how that was going to move forward. Y'all remember that when President Obama was in office and our president now was the vice president then, how they saved the auto industry. President Biden brought that back up, making that clear like, the auto industry owes you a debt, Now, here's the thing I will say about President Biden. He comes from a working class family. Y'all know the story, right? He does come from a working class family. So this is not really outside of his wheelhouse in terms of supporting workers, because his father and his mother is just where he comes from those humble beginnings in Scranton, Pennsylvania. So this is not outside of who he is. But it is interesting. It is interesting to say the least, because auto workers, the auto companies and the auto industry is a major sector. It's a huge industry. And so to have a president to be with the workers and not with the presidents of these companies, it speaks volumes. And they had a chant. They said, no deal, no wheels. President Biden joined them in that chant. He said, no pay, no parts. So this is interesting. This is very, very interesting. It's a big step. It's a big move for those, not just for the auto workers, but for union and organized laborers, right? Because that's what we're starting to see in this country. That's what the situation was with the WGA, with the Writers Guild, with SAG-AFTRA, with the actors here in Los Angeles. But that's what it's always about, organized labor. So I want to get your take on this very quickly, crew. To get your take on how do you feel about the president taking this historic stand with the auto workers? Do you feel like this is going to help or harm him down in the long run, and especially given the fact of where we are in this country? I would love to get your take on this, folks, and let us continue to talk about this. Willie, you checked in. You said peace, love, and power, family, working and listening. I appreciate you, big brother Willie Frazier. Thank you so much as well. Brother Conscious Thought, my guy, you say greetings and salutations. Good to see you too, Brother Conscious Thought. We'll connect with you. McCole, hey, McCole, good to connect with you. But crew, talk to me about this. Talk to me about the president standing with workers. And I think I'm going to give the president where it's due, the credit where it's due for the president. If you don't stand with the workers in this country, you're not going to have the country. You see what I'm saying? Like, that's the backbone. One of the things that the president mentioned in his remarks was the simple fact that you cannot have, there would be not just an auto industry, but you have to have organized labor. You have to have unions. You have to have this because this is the as he calls it, like the core of the middle class. Of this is the backbone of the country. So you have to have workers. You have to protect workers' rights. And I think this is going to be moving forward. This is probably going to be definitely on the agenda for a lot of states. It may not be on the federal, for the national election agenda, but for the agenda for the states across this country, the workers, the rights of workers, making sure that you ensure benefits, making sure that workers are paid with, reasonable wages or good wages, so that way they can support their families, especially as rising cost of living goes up all across this country. It's making it harder and harder. And when I'm looking at the situation here in Hollywood, but then I'm also looking at the situation like with the auto workers, when corporations intervene and that level of capitalism really kicks in, it makes it harder and harder for workers, for families to live. And it's just that simple. It makes it very hard for families to live. Davey, thank you so much for checking in. Davey Floater, you said this doesn't harm him, it will help him. He has been outflanked by Trump in Palestine, Ohio, and he has that railroad strike blemish. He needs working class support to win. Absolutely. I agree with you there, Davey. Thank you for posting that. You're absolutely right. He needs this. He needs worker support, man. And one thing that I will say about where we are in this country, regardless of your political affiliation, everything, I think we can all agree that if you're working in certain industries, where if you're working in the mining industry, the coal industry, if you're working in like factory work, if you're doing any type of quote unquote blue collar job, you should be well supported. You should be able to take care of your families. You should have benefits. I mean, this is just simple stuff here, folks. This doesn't even matter whether you're black or white. Like, this is just across the board. And you should have unions. There should be ways to make sure that all of these things are always advocated by an organized group of people with organized labor. You should. Because corporate greed is very, very real. And I think, Davey, you would agree with me, man, that corporate greed is very, very real in this country, especially when you're talking about how much money many of these companies are bringing in. You know, when you think about, for example, I'm going back to the strike here in LA with the writers and the actors. I mean, the average cost, a successful movie back in the day, they would say if a movie earned $300 million at the box office, that was considered to be a major success, $400 million at the box office. Now, a successful movie, let's take a movie like Barbie, let's take a movie like Mario, let's take any of these major movies that have come out over these past couple of months. They've hit the $1 billion mark, folks. The $1 billion mark. And if you have all of this talent, you have crew members, you have writers, you have the directors, you have actors, and they're literally getting, $50,000 or $60,000. Like writers might get $60,000, right? All of those things. If you have if you're getting paid $60,000, but the studios are making, hand over fist money. How is that fair? You're using the brilliance and the talent of people to create a product that garners you millions upon millions of dollars, and yet they still can't feed their families. They can't live in the city that they work in. They can't survive. So that happens in Hollywood. And so we know what's happening in the automakers. The president said that they are doing, these auto companies are doing incredibly well. Their quarter earnings are just out the skyrocket. People are back on the road. We're out and about again. But the folks that make the cars, the folks that are in the factories, the folks that put themselves out there each and every day are getting pennies. And I'm saying that, I'm using that as a euphemism, but they're getting such a small amount compared to the amount of profit that these companies are getting. It's corporate greed. It's corporate greed. All right, let me go to some more what other folks are, what y'all saying on this, and then we're gonna take a quick pause. Benny Hill, my guy, you said they still didn't endorse him because they feel he hasn't done enough. Coming down and standing with the workers is only symbolic. That's true. That's true. That's true. All right. So that is very, very true. They haven't endorsed them. But let me if I was President Biden, I wouldn't even need an endorsement. I would just say, you know what? Just because it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. Let me just stand with y'all because it's the right thing to do. Because we need auto workers. We need y'all to do the job that some people won't do and other people can't do. There it is. Let's talk a little bit. Let me hear from Conscious Thought. Conscious Thought, you said working class, middle class workers are having their influence eroded by the advent of automation. Yeah, there needs to be greater emphasis placed on upskilling and retraining for U.S. workers of now and later. Absolutely. I agree with that, Conscious Thought. I agree with that. Automation, people are saying with the machine intelligence, all of these things that are helping to kind of move the industry forward, but it also has left in the background human intelligence, human participation. I'm trying to think of the best word here to describe. Like you're leaving people in the back burner, right? So the industry and it has gone through these major innovations. But to your point, Conscious Thought, we're not upskilling. I love that word. I appreciate you for posting that word. Upskilling, meaning that you're not gaining as a worker, you're not getting that level of professional development that will allow you to be in a better position, to earn more, to get better benefits, and to essentially to use your talents and skills. So I love that. Pauline, you agree with Conscious as well. You said you are absolutely right. Pretty Brown Mimi, you said, I think that housekeepers, janitors should strike next. They work very hard too. Very hard. See, these are jobs that a lot of people don't pay. And guess who gets jobs like this, folks? And we talk about this and people get mad about this. But those who come across the waters, they get these jobs, right? They get these jobs and they try to make a way for immigrants. They make a way to try to get these jobs that a lot of quote unquote, people don't want. A lot of Americans don't want. And then we get mad because we're like, oh, well, they're taking the jobs, but we don't. Some of these jobs we don't want. So are you upset that somebody else is trying to provide for themselves and their families? It's a very complicated matter. Let me see here. Corinna, you checked in, and folks, many of you are saying, look, the president needs to come to the station, to the network. And Corinna, you said, I agree, Black Star Network deserves an exclusive interview with the president of the United States, that who no doubt would not be in office without us. Come on now. Black folks, workers, yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with y'all more on that. Look, I got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's switch gears a little bit. I'm going to share with you some of the remarks that Vice President Kamala Harris, they're both out there in the streets now, folks, working and trying to show their support and solidarity. Vice President Harris, she has been on a tour of HBCUs for a tour called Fight for Our Freedoms. And she's talking about a number of issues that are relevant to the next generation of Black students. So we're going to have, I'm going to share with you some of the recent remarks she just made today as she visited Morehouse College in Atlanta. So stay with us. That conversation is up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
On his first day in office, with the country in crisis, President Biden got to work for us. Cutting Black child poverty in half, more money for Black entrepreneurs, millions of new, good-paying jobs. He's lowered the cost of living and prescription drugs. But there's more to do. He gets it because we all deserve dignity, safety, respect, and a chance to do more than just get by, but to get ahead.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Welcome to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We talked a little bit about what President Biden is doing. He is out in the country making his rounds, showing his support and solidarity. He just showed up in Michigan, where the United Auto Workers have been picketing for better pay, better benefits, and so much more. So he showed his support for workers earlier this morning. We just played his remarks about that. Let me just take a couple of extra comments around that situation. Then I'm gonna share with you what Vice President Harris is doing on her end, as both the president and the vice president are now traveling around the country being a part of different causes. But I love what Beauty and Blood you posted. You said, we also need to bring back trade skill training in schools. These are no longer jobs you can get out of high school because these skills haven't been taught in schools widespread for decades. I love that. I absolutely love that. I feel like, and I'm gonna try to make this comparison here, Beauty and Blood. So I want you to just walk with me on this one. The skills training, I remember in Baltimore, we had specified schools, like there were schools, technical high schools that we called them, that did the special things, working. It wasn't just like factory work. It was like machine work, right? Some of students can become machinists. Students can learn how to use machines for whether it's construction or for design work, those type of things. So trade schools have a place. And I think that if one of the possible solutions to at least solving the labor problem or solving the innovation problem that we face in this country is that we got to go back to the schools. And here's the other part of that. And maybe Corinna, when she comes back on Friday, Corinna, maybe we can have this conversation as well, that the schools can be a new source of not just employees, but could be a place of innovation in a very big way. Trade schools can be, those skills about trade can be taught there, but then you also can teach young people about civics. This was an idea that was brought up. I was reading a New York Times piece, and one of the writers had put it out here that in order for us to get young people politically engaged, but more importantly, to get back to a space where young people understand how the government works, that civics need to be really emphasized in schools. So I'm just bringing those two pieces together, Beauty and Blood, because I feel like schools might be the untapped resource that we can go to try to bring certain things back on track in this country. And I don't know if you agree with me or not, but I think there is something there that if we go back to skills training in high schools, if we go back to civics training, civics teaching in high schools and college, that we're starting to kind of plant the seed in the next generation on how to become active citizens and how they can become part of the trade economy, how they can use their hands and those and having that skill set, right? Even though we might be becoming more and more technologically advanced, but I know that many of you, and I know my pops came from this school of thought, right? Being able to use your hands along with your brain is a real huge skill set. These are like, you become like a triple threat. You know what I'm saying? So you have good ideas, you know how to use your head, you know how to think. You know what I'm saying? Like you become this very marketable, for lack of a better word, worker, right? Because you have these skill sets. So that might be something that we need to consider and even advocate for. Something that we need to advocate for, especially in the Black community. You got a lot of young men, a lot of young women who would love to kind of get back to that and not just simply look at the screens all day, but to get back to using their hands, building something. I know many of you are probably in that space. There's a lot of satisfaction you get from building something or doing something using your hands from scratch. So just wanted to throw that out there. I think that is a fantastic idea, Beauty and Blood. So thank you for bringing that into the conversation. All right, now let's switch gears. Let's talk about what Vice President Kamala Harris is doing, as she is doing her part to show solidarity and advocate for certain things for the next generation of young Black students and Black leaders. She has been making her way going to HBCU. She started kicking it off, this Fight for Our Freedoms tour with NC in North Carolina, and talking to Black students there. She got a warm reception there. So I know a lot of people was posting on social media like, oh, nobody likes Vice President Harris. No, I'm not. I'm not in that camp at all. I know people really like her, and I know what they get excited about her. I mean, she's still an exciting person to have a Black woman in the role of vice president. So we can't just act as if that's not something to be excited about. So students, she talked to the students there. She made her way from North Carolina. Now she's in Atlanta today. She visited Morehouse College and those schools down there. You have Morehouse, you have Spelman, you have Morris Brown. So she's making her rounds down there. And she talked about those issues that were important to the next generation of Black students and Black leaders. Talking about abortion, climate control, the banning of books, and so much more. So I'm going to share with you a little bit of what she said as she spoke to the students of Morehouse College today. Take a listen.
And so I'm also here to remind you of the power of your vote, the importance of registering to vote, and then voting as one of the ways that you will make a difference in our country, in our communities, and to the future of the world. So those are the many reasons that I'm on this tour that is about saying we all are in this fight and this fundamental fight for our freedoms. And this is not a time to sit passively by while there is what I believe a full-on intentional attack against hard-won, hard-fought freedoms and rights. And so I'm here to work with you and to say thank you for all that you are doing as the leaders in our country who are going to make the difference.
Amazing. Amazing. Really quickly, raise your hand if you're already registered to vote. Yes, amazing. Now, who in here is going to register if you're not already registered? Okay, that's all right. I like your honesty. You should absolutely get ready to get registered to vote. This is going to be serious at the local level and, of course, the election year next year. Now, we have student questions because, of course, we want to make sure that our students are involved. We have RJ Jackson, a student in the audience. So, well, I will ask your question, but I just want you to say hello. Say hello. That's RJ, okay? Now, RJ asks, how can HBCU students continue the legacy of protecting voting rights for the people of our community?
So, RJ, first of all, look, we all know, especially those of us who attend or have attended an HBCU, that we stand on very broad shoulders of the leaders who came before us, who fought and died for our right to vote. So we start with that, understanding that there was blood that was sacrificed for the right to vote, and we cannot let that be in vain. We also know that we are taught at HBCUs, we are taught within our communities and families that history is kind of a relay race. And those upon whose shoulders we stand, they did what they could do when they were carrying the baton, and then they handed it to us. And the question will be, what do we do while we are carrying the baton for our part of the race? And one of those things that we must do is exercise our power and not let it be suppressed or silenced in any way, including with our right to vote. I say that understanding the state that I am in, the state of Georgia, where there have been laws passed that are intentionally trying to make it more difficult for you to vote. Laws that say, which is just, for the folks who we honor as the heroes of the various movements, for them to think that in this year of our Lord, 2023, that here in the state of Georgia, the heart of the civil rights movement, that there would be a law that was passed that would make it illegal to give people food and water while they stand in line to exercise their civic right. And the hypocrisy abounds, because whatever happened to love thy neighbor? Come on. They've passed laws in Georgia that say when you go to vote, if you go to a private college, your school ID will not qualify as ID to vote. Who here goes to a private college? You see what I'm saying? There are people who are intentionally trying to make it more difficult for you to vote. There are others who are suggesting that your vote doesn't matter or it won't count. And I'm saying that we can never let the powerful forces that have always existed that try to silence us, we cannot let them win. And I would further add that there is empirical evidence of the fact that when you vote, it matters. So in 2020, in the height of a pandemic, we had record young voter turnout, and it is because of that turnout that Joe Biden was elected President of the United States and I was elected the first Black woman Vice President of the United States. Because you voted. Because you voted. And our young leaders said, we know that our HBCUs are centers of academic excellence, but have for too long been underfunded. And because you voted and we were able to get in office together with Cedric Richmond, we have now invested over $7 billion in our HBCUs. Because you voted and said too many of our communities around the country, our babies are drinking toxic water out of lead pipes, and those lead pipes need to be removed, and the grandmothers and grandfathers have been talking about it for generations. And because you voted, we are now in the process of removing all the lead pipes in our country. Because you voted and said our HBCU students are 70% of the population are Pell Grant eligible, and you need to increase Pell Grants. We've been able to do that because you voted. Because you voted and said student loan debt is slowing down my ability to pursue a career that I might want for the sake of a career that pays enough so I can pay off that debt, even though that's not my passion. You said student loan debt is slowing down my ability to be able to have a family or buy a home. We came in office and then forgave student loan debt of up to $20,000 for Pell Grant recipients. But here's the thing. There are a whole bunch of people who didn't want us to have that happen and have stood in the way of allowing that to follow through. We have to keep voting to push through these policies that we know will actually have an impact on real people's lives. And Cedric, if you want to add anything to that in terms of some of this work and why voting really did matter and will matter.
Well, the best example is why voting matters is because you have Vice President Harris, some people refer to, some people say Madam Vice President, but around the White House we call her the MVP. But the fact that you have a Vice President that left the White House to come to the House to talk to you all is the biggest example of why your vote matters.
Amazing.
So, Madam VP, we're both HBCU graduates, Morehouse here, Howard there.
Yes. You know.
And there's always one. And you are gracing us with your presence here on the campus of Morehouse, joined by the student leaders of Spelman, Clark Atlanta, and Morris Brown, and all institutions that have played a big role in shaping the history of this country,
yes,
especially Black history. And as you and the president say all the time, Black history is American history. So when you look at and see the efforts to control, erase, and not teach the full history of this country, what do you think about that issue? What do you think about this moment in time?
So what I say, the full sentence that I say is Black history is America's history, period. It's not a debatable point. And again, this Fight for Our Freedoms tour is because we really are in a fight, including the fight for the freedom to be taught America's full history. And again, book bans in this year of our Lord 2023, where there are people who walk around with their fancy flag pins and they want to be leaders of our country and the world, and they dare to tell us that enslaved people benefited from slavery? They gaslight us as they try to insult us. And be clear. Part of what's at play also is they are trying to distract us. They are trying to distract us with undebatable points. That's not a debate. We're not debating that. But they're trying to distract us. They're trying to divide our country. Understand what's going on. There is a plan afoot to distract from the fact that the very same ones who would try to erase America's history don't have a plan for America's future. They try to divide us, to suggest that we are all different so we don't build coalition, which history has always taught us is one of the most important ingredients in any movement in our country that has been about progress. They try to distract us and divide us. We cannot let that happen. You look at what's happening with what they're doing around, for example, in Florida, the Don't Say Gay bill. Now, I proudly performed some of the first same-sex marriages in our country in 2004. Okay. So next year, I'm dating myself. Next year, that's going to be 20 years from now, from next year. I'm looking at the young teachers in Florida who are in their 20s, who may be in a same-sex relationship, who are afraid to put up a photograph of their family for fear they may be fired. That's what's happening in our country. What's happening in our country is a full-on attack against people's rights and the freedom to be. Freedom to be. And I want to say to the young leaders here, it doesn't have to be this way. Do know that. It does not have to be this way. And the way that we change it is by ensuring that we stand up and we are vocal, we are organized, and we fight for our freedoms and protect our freedoms. But what's happening in our country right now with those who are spewing hate so openly and unapologetically, there's the story about the two frogs and the two pots of water? Okay, so here it goes. So, two frogs and two pots of water. So, in one pot, the water's there, and you put the frog in the water and you slowly turn up the heat. And that frog will be hanging out like, oh, it's getting a little warm in here. The next thing you know, that water's boiling, that frog perishes. The other pot of water, you first turn up the heat to boiling, then you drop the frog in it. That frog jumps out. Let's not be that first frog. See what's happening. There it is. See what's happening.
There it is. That's such an important analogy, and I think we understand that for sure. Now, we're going to make sure we continue with our student questions. And RJ, I saw you standing the whole time, so I'm going to make sure you get to say hello on the mic, because we do have a mic now. Can I get Carrie Singleton Jr.?
That was Vice President. All right, folks, that was Vice President Kamala Harris talking to student leaders and students from Morehouse, Morris Brown, Clark, Atlanta, and Spelman, as she visited Morehouse College today. She talked about the fight for our freedoms. We got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, I'm going to get your take on what the Vice President has said. I see the chat is brewing. Folks are talking about some of the things that Vice President Harris brought into the conversation. So let's talk a little bit more about it on the other side. So stay with us. That conversation and a lot more is up here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
President Biden has delivered for Black America. More funding for Black entrepreneurs. Millions of new good-paying jobs. He's lowering the cost of medications and the cost of living. Joe Biden is delivering for us, and that's the facts.
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punching! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. We just played for you some remarks from Vice President Kamala Harris as she visited Morehouse College down in Atlanta, Georgia, speaking to students and student leaders about the importance of a number of issues, from everything from abortion to voting rights to banning books in the country, and the importance of getting involved in the process. I want to get your take, crew, on the things that you shared, the things that Vice President Harris said, and get your take about, the direction that she is working in, especially now, given all of these dynamics, and especially since we are a year away from the national election. Now, folks, we're streaming live right now on Roland Martin's YouTube page. Just go to YouTube, click on Roland Martin, click on the link for the live stream of today's show. We're also streaming on Facebook, and of course on blackstarnetwork.com, and on Amazon News and your Fire TV and Plex TV, where you can find us on those two platforms 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All right, crew, so what's your take on what Vice President Harris had to say about all of these issues and talking to these student leaders from these HBCUs about their importance and involvement? Do you feel like that this is going to, is she adding to the conversation? But more importantly, the things that is she saying that how do we move forward on? And this is not just about semantics as much as it is about the fact that we are in a place right now where we have to bring Black students into the fold. And so I applaud her for at least going to the HBCUs, to having those type of conversations, to getting some thoughts from the student body. Because guess what, folks? We don't normally hear from young people, from young leaders, from student leaders until something happens. But to get them into the conversation now, this is a good start. This is, well, not going to say start. I would say this is a good place for us to be. But what's your take on this as we talk about the situation? All right, let me go to what y'all have to say. Let me see here. Let me start here with Andre. You posted something. Andre John. Andre, you thank you so much for joining us once again, sir. You said, what's she going to do about it? I tell you, with the thumbs down, nothing at all, nothing, all talk. Just rally up the base for next year's election. What a joke. Wow. Sounds like you're pretty critical, Andre, about the vice president's efforts to get young people engaged. Is there a particular part of this, of her demonstration, or just in her efforts that really got under your skin? Because I want to get more details before we respond, but I would love to hear, Andre, why you're taking this stance, especially when she's reaching out to HBCUs. Thank you so much. Let me hear from other folks. And folks, you can check in on our page, or check in on Roland Martin's YouTube page, and we can have this part of the conversation. Anastasia, you checked in and said, I have to say this Morehouse School of Medicine also have white students at these schools here in Atlanta, Georgia. Well, why not? Why not? Why not have white students? I remember at Morgan in Baltimore, they had students from Palestine and Israel and students from all around the globe. Why not? Why not? Maybe they'll get a better understanding, a greater sense of consciousness will start to emerge because they are in a Black school. And so they can hear the problems, they can hear about these issues, they can have a better sense of how to serve Black people. Yeah, why not? I think it's a great idea that they allow white students in medical school there. Absolutely. Real Brooklyn, you checked in and said, since being the vice, the only thing she is known for is abortion rights. What about jobs, and bringing back manufacturing jobs? Well, yeah, okay. That's a great question. I think we can just throw that out there on the table as well. What about the jobs? What would you like to see, Real Brooklyn? What would you like to see? What kind of stance would you like the vice president to take in regards to manufacturing jobs, especially now that we shared in the first part of the show, President Biden kind of showing his support for the UAW. But what would you like the vice president to stand? How would you like her to take her stance as it relates to jobs? I appreciate you for checking in. Dr. Sarah Williams, my sister, checked in. You said diversity of all cultures is vital to a better learning experience for all. Absolutely. At FAMU, I had the opportunity to learn with students from different countries, and it was an amazing experience. Absolutely. That's going back to the part about white students at a medical school at a black college. Diversity is huge. And at the same time, that learning curve, that learning from each other. So Dr. Sarah Williams, I appreciate you posting that, because I think I agree with you more. It puts us in a different space where we can learn together. Now, should HBCUs, and I would have to look at the data. Again, I maybe defer this to my sister Corinna, who's in the education space, but when you allow our students outside of the community, white students, foreign students, students that come from other countries, what does that do for that campus? What does that do for the learning experience for those students? So, we got to look at that. But one of the things, as Dr. Sarah Williams has pointed out, that you learn from each other. You learn from each other. And you know what? For HBCUs, if we're talking about using HBCUs as a space and a place and the source to change the culture or to change the conversation about Black people in a very big way, bring people into that world, into that space. So that way, guess what? Boom, that level of consciousness starts to happen. They start to see things differently, start to see things from a different perspective. And it all works out for the benefit of the good. But I love that point. Thank you so much, Dr. Sarah Williams, for posting that. I know, Corinna, you also talked about the fact that she mentioned she's a Black woman. She's a Black woman that graduated from an HBCU. And I don't know why we're still having like this very silly conversation about the blackness of Vice President Kamala Harris. Like, I don't even want to entertain that. It's unfortunate that when that comes up, there's still this kind of like pushback on who she is and how black is she. That's silly. To me, that's silly. You see what I'm saying? Like to me, that's silly. She has obviously embraced her blackness, even though she's made up of other people, but she's embraced her blackness. So why are we still having conversations like how black is she? Because if we looked at our personal history, some of us may not be as black as we think we are. I think that's one of them conversations that get you distracted from what's really important. At this point, if you can't say that Vice President Kamala Harris is a black woman, I don't know what to tell you. I can't help you. I cannot help you. Corinna, you also pointed out, you said have some critique and heat. I love Corinna, man. She always talk about bringing some heat. Have some critique and heat for your senators and House representatives. There is a major lack there due to the severe ignorance of how government works. It's easier to blame the black woman. Ooh, that was spicy. That was spicy, Corinna. Absolutely. It's look, let me tell you, this is why I said, going back to that original thought of teaching civics into the school system and really emphasizing that. We are literally at a place, folks, that like when Vice President Harris comes to these type of forums and these type of settings, you got to break it down for people how the process works, right? You got to help people to understand. And I think You Don't Like My Music, you posted earlier on, you said that voting is the least thing that we can do. And I couldn't agree with you more. When we're talking about this level of political engagement, when we're talking about fighting for our freedoms, you got to break it down for people, help people to connect the dots, because there's so much going on that it's becoming harder and harder for people to connect the dots about what's happening and bringing it home or relating it to the world that they are in. Y'all hear me on this? Like, that's part of the challenge. I think that's part of the reason why people aren't as politically engaged as they could be, because they don't see the dots being connected, right? Like, oh, okay, if I do this, like, for example, the Supreme Court appointee, right? Help people to understand how significant that is. Right? Like, okay, the president chooses the Supreme Court justice. The Supreme Court justice is responsible for this, this, and this. And then when they make a decision, it becomes the quote unquote law of the land. And then from there, states start to have conversations about it. And then it comes down to the local level. Like, you gotta help people understand this. And I think that's part of why we're kind of in this space where it's like we make it a little game, we make some strides, and then we kind of have to fall back and we make some strides because we're just not as informed about how government works. To your point, Corinna, how government works. We're not as informed, or we don't have really any interest to know what's going on with our government, what's going on with certain bills, what's going on with this law and that law. Like, we just don't have any interest. So you got to help people to see, and you got to help people to connect the dots. All right, here we go. What else we got here? Waited for Real. You checked in, Waited for Real. Thank you for checking in. You said last month, Vice President Harris just announced how she helped bring more than 200 manufacturing jobs to Wisconsin. Big shout for that. I didn't hear that announcement, but if she made that announcement, that's a huge plus. Definitely a huge plus. All right, let me see who it is. My sister Anastasia checked in. You said, Anastasia, she's the first woman in the vice president seat, so let's give her some points on that. Second, we as a people need to read Martin Luther King's speech on economics and how it applies to us as a people teach that. Let me tell you something. Once you bring King into the conversation, you got my full attention, okay? Anastasia, you got my full attention. If we have a sense, and I'm gonna say this and we're gonna take our next pause. If with the way Dr. King taught, and I don't know if any of you are students of Dr. King in terms of not just his oratory skills, but students of his thinking, his personal politics, his methodology behind what he did when he was among us as working in the civil rights movement. You got to understand his economics. You got to understand that Dr. King saw things. He's a systems thinker, first thing. And if you're not familiar with that terminology, the systems thinker is not just seeing the small pieces, but also how the small pieces relate to each other to create the larger system. And I've studied system thinking. Brother Damon Blissett, I know you as an engineer, you understand this concept as well. So when you're talking about being a systems thinker, Dr. King was the type of man that looked at the small pieces, then he said, okay, so this works like this works like this, and now this is the end result, this is the outcome. Or if you put this amount of material in, this is going to be the output. So understanding that as Dr. King, in terms of his economics and how he saw things, right? It really was like, what is in the best benefit for the greater good, right? That's what we're in right now. And I think that we can all learn from Dr. King. Every single one of us that's listening to my voice, that's in the chat, even me as I'm saying these words to you, we can all benefit from Dr. King because he understood systems, he understood politics, and he understood people. So his economics, back to your point, Anastasia, was not just about profit and losses, gains and dividends and that level of economics. His economics was human capital. Understanding that if a human being put this much thing and brought this much talent and skills into the system, then what would be the quote unquote return on the investment from that, right? And so that is part of the great consciousness. That's part of this movement that we are advocating for right now, to get out of just seeing people as things and seeing people as people, and then understanding that people, through their talents, their skills, their brilliance, their intelligence, bring something into the system, right? And then create this overall system of not just dollars and cents, but also bring a system that's going to open us up to understanding how a person's talent can lead to a person's full expression, and how that full expression can lead to service, and how that service can lead to a better quality of life for all people to enjoy. That level of economics. All right, I got to take a quick pause. When we come back, more conversation with you as we kind of break down some of the ideas and some of the thoughts that Vice President Kamala Harris put forward to Black student leaders. And of course, I want to hear what your thoughts are about these things. So stay with us. Let's continue the conversation on the other side here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
On his first day in office, with the country in crisis, President Biden got to work for us. Cutting Black child poverty in half, more money for Black entrepreneurs, millions of new, good-paying jobs. He's lowered the cost of living and prescription drugs. But there's more to do. He gets it because we all deserve dignity, safety, respect, and a chance to do more than just get by, but to get ahead.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
When you talk about Blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punching! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We have been talking about, we played just a few minutes excerpt from Vice President Kamala Harris' visit to the colleges that in Atlanta, to our HBCUs that in Atlanta as part of her Fight for Our Freedoms tour. And this is a tour she's going to be doing for a month, for a 30-day period. And it is a tour that includes HBCUs, our historic Black colleges and universities. She's also going to be visiting some Hispanic-serving institutions, some community colleges, some apprenticeship programs, and some state schools. And so she has already been to 11 college campuses this year after traveling to 14 in 2022. And so she's still got some more colleges on the docket. She's gone to Hampton University, North Carolina A&T in Greensboro. She went to Reading Area Community College in Reading, Pennsylvania. She went to Morehouse today. The next one she's expected to go to are University of Wisconsin in Madison in Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin-Madison in Madison, Wisconsin on October the 4th. The College of Southern Nevada in Las Vegas on October 12th. And then Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff, Arizona on October the 17th. So she is making her rounds. She did have another initiative called the Summer of Action, where she visited 17 states for that initiative. So she's been out and about, folks. And more importantly, she's been trying to get young people engaged in this whole process. As she talks about everything from reproductive freedom, gun safety, climate change, voting rights, LGBTQ issues, inequality, book bans, and so much more. So I want to get your take on this, not necessarily of her tour, because let me just tell you, we need it. Vice President, Madam Vice President, you need it. You need to go to these schools. Again, I appreciate the fact that she's tapping into these schools, because I don't want us to lose sight of the brilliance and of the energy that young leaders, student leaders can bring into the national conversation, right? So for a vice president who is still young, vibrant, full of life, a vice president that is still culturally relevant, it only makes sense that she uses that that capital, right? She uses that part of herself to organize, to have conversations, to galvanize. We saw her hosting the one of the 50th anniversary of hip hop, and she had hosted a special event for that a couple of weekends ago. Brother Roland was there for that. So that's what's needed. That's what's needed. So again, I'm giving credit where credit is due. You need that outreach because we've been having all of these conversations, and it's becoming so culturally easy. I'm not saying that it is easy, but culturally easy for us to forget that we got another generation coming up behind us. And as much as we like to be on the front lines, right? At some point, we're going to have to pass the torch. But you can't pass the torch to a generation that doesn't know what's going on. I'm gonna say that again. You can't pass the torch to the generation who's completely oblivious about what's really important, right? Outside of the cultural stuff from hip hop, music, fashion. And I push back on a lot of this stuff because we always tend to believe, and this is something that I've personally experienced as an organizer, as one who ran a nonprofit organization for young people, youth empowerment. One of the things that I always hated, my organization, we would host these leadership conferences, and we did it for 10 years. And the big question that we always got as young leaders, right? And I'm in my 20s, like organizing and everything. And people always say, man, y'all got this conference, man, but what about the party? Like, what about those mixers? Who's coming to those mixers? I'm like, we didn't even put in leadership conferences, mixers and after parties and things, because you simply want to know why. You could you could do that anytime, anywhere. When you came to our conference, this is about the business of talking about the issues, the business of leadership, right? I mean, we went out, and I'm not saying we didn't enjoy the night in the sense of going out to a dinner, but we're not going to put it into the schedule of the conference. Hey, at 8 o'clock, everything shuts down, and we're going to bring out the DJ and boom, 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 because that becomes the focus of a lot of the gatherings where Black youth in particular are. That we always have to, quote unquote, constantly entertain. Like, we can't educate and empower because people will say, well, what about, and even in my 20s, I push back on it. So I ain't new to this whole idea of like, I want to go to a conference, I want to learn, I want to be empowered. I don't have to worry about the after party. So I push back, and the reason I'm bringing these things up is because at some point, young Black students, young leaders, Black student leaders, you got to get them, and this was years ago when I was doing this, so I can only imagine now that the culture is constantly calling for them to not take themselves seriously, to not think on anything serious. That's the point I'm making, folks. You know what I'm saying? That you always want to party, but you don't want to build. You don't want to empower. That's another conversation. So I appreciate Madam Vice President for going to these schools to have serious conversations with these young leaders, because they are 1, 2, 3 years out from going into the world, right? And then when they go into the world, now their consciousness has already been pricked, right? Y'all remember back in the day, and then I'm gonna get what y'all take. I want to get your take on this. Y'all remember back in the day, especially in the East Coast. I'm not sure how it was in the West Coast, but I know East Coast and down the South. when we had some of the most thought-provoking Black scholars visiting the colleges. Y'all remember that? Y'all remember those times like the 80s and the 90s where you had everybody from the late, great Dr. Francis Cress Welsing and to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, to all of these great thinkers and minds that would come through, right? Talking to Black students. What happened to that? And what they would do was they pricked the consciousness. That's how a lot of us got conscious at that time, because you went to a college campus, right? And things gotten so political now, even in the HBCU space, unfortunately, that it's more pandering to, what's the word I'm looking for? It's more pandering to the lighthearted stuff versus the thought-provoking stuff. And I remember that time when you would see major Black leaders, Jesse Jackson and others, who would go to these college campuses, right? Especially the Black ones, or those campuses that had a significant Black student population. And they would go to these campuses and have these conversations. They ain't no party. They didn't need all of the frills and the thrills. They didn't have all of that, the entertainment. You went to them, so-and-so coming to campus, you know what you did that night? You went to a lecture. And we may need to bring that back into the culture, because that's the time we're living in, where you got to have thought-provoking leaders coming straight to the students. Students ain't driving to certain things, but having a Black leader come into a student and you talking about the issue, you really getting them excited about service, about their people, about this idea of freedom and liberation, right on the college campus. Students never forget moments like that. That's the type of culture I'm trying to push back into the situation, right? Y'all remember that? Y'all talk to me on that. So yeah, I'm excited and I'm happy that the vice president is moving in this direction, because we got to bring young people into the conversation. Latrice, you said too much partying and not enough business. We're at a critical time and Black folks are focused on nonsense. Right. I mean, we could talk about that all day, Latrice. We could talk about that all day. But yeah, I don't mind taking, we can enjoy a little music and something like that, but don't let that be the core. Don't let that be the heart of the gathering. No, the heart of the gathering is learning. The heart of the gathering is becoming more conscious about what's happening outside of the college campus, right? Because the college campus is like a womb. Y'all heard me correctly. The college campus is like a womb. So if it's like the woman when she's carrying a child. So whatever the woman takes in, whatever the nutrients of whatever she's taking in gets given to the baby. Same thing for the college campus. The culture that's on the outside of the campus starts to penetrate through the walls of the inside. And whatever the culture is, right? It's like a mother who it's unfortunately if a mother is not taking care of her mind, her body, her spirit during that time of gestation, then there's a likelihood that the baby may be affected, right, in a negative way. But if the mother is taking care of herself, she's around good people, she's around good energy, then she gives birth to a baby that's is in a much healthier space. Same thing with the colleges, the Black colleges. Wherever Black students are, we gotta feed them the best of what we have to offer, whether it's culturally, educationally, politically. They gotta be fed. And outside sources can play a huge role in that. And I hope that alumni, especially Black schools at our HBCUs, that alumni understand the vital importance and necessity of making sure that you always exposing the students to some speaker, to some level of empowerment, to some consciousness, man. It's a hell of a thing. You go to an HBCU and you walk out that HBCU, you either hate Black people, you don't know nothing about Black people, right? Or at the end of the day, you don't even want to serve or care about black people. That's a hell of a place to be, and you say you come from an HBCU. All right, Real Brooklyn, you said Farajii going to a college campus right before election ain't going to do great things. It matters if great things are done while in office. Promises and more promises ain't about, okay, Real Brooklyn. I mean, it may not help in this election. It may not help in this election, but it could help in the congressional in that the election afterwards, right? But the colleges, I know that the colleges, Real Brooklyn, especially like a lot of these HBCUs, because they're so political, because you got the boards and their connection in trying to get money and accreditation and all of that stuff, they can't only expose the students to so much consciousness now. That's why you don't see a lot of those black thinkers and scholars going to the school. And I want to ask Dr. Carr about that. Like, Dr. Carr, do you see that anymore? Because why? It's so political now. But I bet you, just like you, Real Brooklyn, have been conscious somewhere along the line when you probably been conscious and somewhere and when you were a young person, we do ourselves a disservice if we don't offer or afford that same opportunity to this next generation. Beauty and Blood, you said, unfortunately, currently young people like myself are focused on keeping a roof above our head, food in our mouths, and paying our school debts. We can't get out and participate because we're working. Exactly. So that's why it's even more important to bring that brilliance, that scholarship to the students where they are. You meet the student, you got to meet the black student. Beauty and Blood, I appreciate you for saying this, because it just adds to the point that you got to meet people and you got to meet these young black students where they are. There are so many things that are pulling on the attention and the minds of black college students today. You got to make an effort. You can't expect college students to come to you. No. You got to meet them where they are. Laura, you said I've been voting since I turned the age of 18 and I couldn't wait to do it. Too many people lost their lives for me to have the right to vote, and it was for Jimmy Carter. I hear that. Jimmy Carter just celebrated, I think he's about to celebrate 99 years, 99th birthday or 100th birthday soon. He was just at a Plains Peanut Festival down in Georgia over the weekend. So he's still making it around. He's still making an impact. So it never ends. But Beauty and Blood, you added, there are so many houseless college students today struggling to survive who don't have the time or resources to get out and participate in these movements. And that's what it is. So if we know that, then that's why colleges, especially our HBCUs, have to make sure that they bring that to the students. First, you got to get nobody listening to no stuff about no movement if they can't eat and they don't have a place to live. You gotta help students there first and foremost. You gotta meet that bare necessity, food and a roof over your head. Once that happens, then you could start talking politics and getting involved and all that stuff. But you shouldn't have no houseless students, man. Black students that go to a black school. Come on. Tiana, you said President Jimmy Carter would be 99 on October 1st. Absolutely. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Corinna, you checked back and you said we have to connect the dots for those college students to educate them on how this impacts their lives. Exactly. And guess what? They want to know. There's this assumption, Corinna, I'm sure you probably heard this, that black students don't care. And that's not true. You can go in any college, whether it's an HBCU or PWI, predominantly white institution, and you talk to any black student there, the issues are so big and it's so blatant now at this point in time, y'all, and I got to take another pause. At this point in time, it's hard to not see it. You see what I'm saying? They want to know. What's going on? How can I get involved? How can I make this situation better? That's how big all of this is that we're experiencing. They want to know. So yeah, we got to get them involved. So I'm all for connecting them. And I know is even though it's election time and all of those things, the precedent, setting the precedent for that type of this level of conversation, every major candidate needs to have a student leadership plan or agenda. How do you plan to engage the next generation? It would be wonderful. I'm just throwing this out there, y'all. If HBCUs hosted a presidential forum, a presidential debate with student moderators, student leaders composing, creating the boundaries, everything student led, bringing all of the candidates out. Maybe it's on the Democrats. I don't know if the Republicans will show up, but you bring them out. And you have student leaders, and the whole debate is about student issues. That would be phenomenal. Black students, Latino students, students that have been marginalized, who have been overlooked, houseless students, students in poor community. Like, you got to have young people at the forefront. I'm not talking about no rinky-dinky joint. I'm talking about a serious debate. What's your take on this? What's your take on that? Everything student oriented. I'm gonna just put that out there. Can y'all imagine that? Would y'all be supportive of something like that? To see an HBCU Black student leadership presidential debate. And all the candidates would have to qualify, and then they pose questions by student leaders. Something to think about. Definitely something to think about. I got to take another quick pause. When we come forward, I want to switch gears because now I'm setting up something, y'all. I got to share with you this announcement. I got to do it because it's that time to do it. So we're going to take a quick pause. When we come forward, the big announcement on the other side. Stay with me. Y'all don't want to miss this. It's the culture right here on the Black Star Network.
President Biden has delivered for Black America. More funding for Black entrepreneurs. Millions of new good-paying jobs. He's lowering the cost of medications and the cost of living. Joe Biden is delivering for us, and that's the facts.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. you get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause, to long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. I can't even keep my face straight because I'm so doggone excited to share this with you. All right, so here's the thing, folks. As we've been having these conversations, I just take in a lot of what you say. And these conversations, they truly resonate with me even when the show is over. During the rest of the day, I'm thinking about your responses and everything. And then I'm constantly trying to do my due diligence of always tapping in and taking a look at what's going on in our culture, what's happening right now. And one of the big topics that I have seen on social media, even as late as this morning or this afternoon, just before the show, I've seen 2 or 3 posts on social media about one thing: men, the state of Black men. And so this is opening my eyes to something. And I see that Black men, as Black men, some people would say that there's a crisis in manhood today, right? Some say that Black men are in a state of uncertainty and in certain places of peril. And so I've been inspired by 2 sisters particularly who have said, Farajii, something needs to be done. This is not just something that I've thought about on my own. Black women have come to me and said, we should do something. And so, when you first are inspired by one person, you're like, okay, let me take this in, let me process this. But then when you are inspired again by a second person, you're like, all right, God, you're talking to me now. God, you must be pushing now. So I'm going to follow the instruction, right? I'm going to handle the assignment. And so we have moved out on this inspiration to create a program that I think will speak directly to this great concern, particularly this concern from Black women, about myself and my brothers as we are in this moment, right? A moment that it has caused us to really question a lot of things about everything from manhood and what does that look like? What does that mean? How should that be expressed? And as I'm growing in my personal understanding of not just manhood and my personal understanding of womanhood and family building and community development, I'm putting myself out there, and my team and we're putting ourselves out there. We're like, you know what? We're going to do something. So on the 28th anniversary of that historic Million Man March, y'all remember that? Y'all know what? I always talk about this because this was one of the greatest demonstrations of Black men coming together in a way that I've never seen in my entire life, folks. I was 16 years old when that great march took place. And when that march happened, myself, my brother, my father, we were standing on the mall about 3, 4 in the morning. It was early. It was early. It's only maybe a couple hundred, maybe a little bit less. By the end of that 16-hour day, history was made. But this inspiration about the state of men, the state of Black men, came to us. And as I was processing it, I said, no, the greatest time to have a conversation about men is in the honor of what that march stood for. And it's not just about that march, it's talking about the principles of that march. So I will say that kicking off on October 16th, 2023, the 28th anniversary of the historic Million Man March, we're going to be hosting here on the show the Culture's Black Men Summit, redefining and celebrating Black manhood. This right here will be a conversation that we will be having with brothers from across this country as we look at a few different areas. We're talking about spirit. We're kicking off the conversation on October 16, 2023, talking about spirituality and how Black men are in faith. Because we can't have a conversation about Black men. We could talk about economics, we could talk about politics, we could talk about all of that other stuff, but nothing supersedes how we see ourselves in relationship to our Creator, to God, however you want to frame it. But we need to have that part of the conversation first to kick us off in the right spirit and in the right manner. So we're going to kick that conversation off that week, October 16th, with talking about spirituality. And then every day for that week, from the 16th through the 20th, if Lee's good, let's put that poster back up, please. Thank you. Every day, we will have a different themed conversation as it talks about Black men in politics, Black men in education, Black men in mass media, Black men in the family, and in the community. We have to have some different conversations. And folks, when we put this, this is our first time talking about this. So already got people lined up. Already got some people lined up. Come on now, look, Farajii Muhammad, boy. We're not playing no games because this is too serious. This is too critical. This is too important. So nowhere else in the digital space, other than here on the Culture, on the Black Star Network, will you have this type of very, very relevant, real conversation that's geared towards redefining and celebrating Black manhood in the way that God will bless us to celebrate. So I'm asking you to just tell your family and friends that on October 16th, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m., every day for an hour, for that hour, every day of the week, from the 16th through the 20th, we have a deep dive into these conversations and how Black men are, the impact that we're made, how we are being shaped as it relates to politics, education, telling our story, mass media, family, community unit, and most importantly, what's going on in the heart, in the mind, in the spirit of Black men. This is our offering to some of the discussions that we're seeing on social media. This is our offering to some of the despair that I hear that Black women are crying out about. Like, how do we have a different discussion? What is it that we need to say? I literally saw today, a sister posted this on Facebook. She said, with all due respect and with no shade given, what is wrong with Black men? That was today. And that affirmed to me that we are on the right path of having this summit. So again, folks, starting on the 28th anniversary of the Holy Day of Atonement, As we celebrated atonement, reconciliation, and responsibility 28 years ago, I want to have just continuing that same vein, I want to have a conversation with my brothers, with Black men, by Black men, for other Black men. But of course, I can't have that conversation without the support of the women, because there were two dynamic sisters that said, Farajii, something needs to be done. And I'm hearing you, sisters. And so this is our response. So I just wanted to throw that out there. You will see more conversations. We're going to have a lot more. We're going to put some stuff out on social media. And then during the course of that week, as we have these conversations, of course, this show is archived by our fantastic production team. We're going to put this out there on YouTube and then just send it out there. I don't care who sees it. I don't care how much we talk about, we're going to create hashtags and everything. But I'm just letting y'all know the conversations about us, about brothers, it's got to happen. It's got to happen. We need to talk, brothers. We need to talk. And this is not coming from a space of hatred. This is not coming from a space of acting as if I know all the answers, because I don't. So that's why I'm getting older brothers. I'm getting seasoned brothers. I'm getting knowledgeable Black men to come onto the show to offer their guidance, their wisdom, and then we're going to try to do our part. And then, as they say, let history be made, but more important, let God do his work on inspiring and raising the consciousness of our people. We just have so much to do. And this is such a critical time for this country. This is a critical time for our people. And so this is a critical time for Black America. And we want to respond to the time with doing something that is in accord with I believe and what we believe as being in accordance with the time, so we can bear fruit, right, in a very, very good and positive way. So again, folks, kicking off on October the 16th, 2023, we're going to be starting to host our Black Men Summit, redefining and celebrating Black manhood. If you want to get more information, if y'all want to, show your support, just email me. Email me at Farajii@blackstarnetwork.com, Farajii@blackstarnetwork.com. My culture crew, I'm going to be asking for you as we put this information out on social media. Please help us to spread the word. And again, this is not about me. It's not about, I just want people to watch the show. No. I want to just be a conduit, a space, a safe space to have some very serious, very empowering, very thought-provoking conversation, and to be used as just a tool, just a little part in the larger design of things, right? Just want to do my part. So that's the big announcement, folks. And I really, truly hope that you are able to join us. And I thank you for the continued support that you have given us here on this show. But this is the type of moves that we're going to be making. And God willing, we are going to be successful in this effort. And then trust and believe me, I've already started thinking about you, sisters, to all the ladies out there. It's like, we got to do something for the ladies. We got to do something for the sisters. And in that part of the conversation, I don't even want to be the host. I'm going to get out the host chair and let the dynamic women that have come to this show, that have been a part of this show, to be a part of that effort, to use this show as how they want to have that conversation. However, we're going to do that. But we got to start doing some things differently. We got to have a different conversation. We got to do this differently in the space that we've been blessed with, the platforms that we've been blessed with. So this is our first offering, and God willing, this will be the first of many things that we do to shift the conversation about us in the culture. All right, folks, I thank each and every one of you. Oh man, I appreciate you so much. I want to thank my dynamic production team, Joel, Shannon, Chris, Maddie, Lise, King, and thank you so much. I want to thank the fantastic platform of Black Star Network and Brother Roland Martin for this visionary idea. but let us continue to build. Let us continue to build. And this is why we always ask you folks, if you are able, if you understand the importance of giving to Black Star Network, you will start to see a return on that investment, folks. So just go to our website today, blackstarnetwork.com, download the app for free. Financially, we are asking for your donations because it powers us to do these type of things, to have these types of conversations. So go to our website today at blackstarnetwork.com, download the app. Please give today and follow us on social media. You can also follow me on social media at The Real Farajii on Instagram, Farajii on Twitter, Farajii Muhammad on Facebook, and The Real Farajii on Threads as well. And I would love to connect with you, but I'm ready for these conversations. I hope you are. And I hope you really enjoy the great wisdom that we have planned for you this coming October the 16th, as we had this special set of discussions for Black men, by Black men, for Black. I thank you. I thank each one of you for being a part of the show. I thank all of you for your continued support. Stay tuned. Up next, we got Roland Martin Unfiltered. Remember this, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we will be back tomorrow. Got my sister Suzette Speaks. She's going to give us an update about what happened at CBC and so much more. So make sure y'all tune in tomorrow for that as well. But as always, thank you all so much for tuning in this afternoon and this evening. And we will look forward to talking to you tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture, right here, only here, exclusively here on the Black Star Network. Talk to you soon. Peace.